A 73-year-old black man, Walter Freeman, stood helpless as Officer Brendan Keegan stole the money he needed for medicine right there on the roadside. For months, this cop had been robbing seniors like him, certain no one would dare fight back. But this time, every single bill was secretly marked by the FBI. Can one elderly man turn humiliation into the trap that exposes a system built on corruption? If this strikes you as powerful, please like and share this story. Let's uncover Walter's fight for justice together. I remember the day it stopped feeling like just another traffic stop. I was idling at the corner of Maple and Elm, 2 cars back, when the blue lights lit up behind Walter Freeman's old Buick. You'd recognize Walter anywhere in Riverdale, tall even at 73 shoulders, still squared from his Army days, the kind of man who still shines his Sunday shoes on a Tuesday. He'd delivered half this town's mail for 42 years, rain or shine. After Karen, his wife, passed, he didn't disappear. He showed up even more teaching chess to kids at the community center, unlocking the church early so the choir could practice fixing a squeaky hinge without being asked. Folks called him Mr. Freeman because respect fit him like a pressed shirt. The cruiser that pulled him over belonged to Officer Brendan Keegan. If you live here, you know that name. He's the one who always seems to find a cracked taillight no one else can see or a rolling stop where a man's wheels were stone still. He likes drivers who won't make a fuss, especially older black folks. The way he steps to the window, it's like the badge gives him gravity. That morning, the sun hit the chrome just so, and I could see Keegan's shoulders tilt in toward Walter's window. He didn't bend to listen. He leaned to control. I couldn't hear the first exchange over the idle of engines, but I saw Walter's hands, both of them, stay high on the wheel. He does that every time, 10 and 2 eyes forward, no sudden moves. He told me once his father taught him that when he was 10. Keep your head down, son. Live to come home. This wasn't the first time. Not by a long shot. In 3 months, Keegan had pulled Walter over 8 times. 8. A brake light that worked fine 5 minutes later. 5 over on a street where everyone does 30. A lane drift on a windless afternoon. Every stop took cash. No receipts. 80 this time, Mr. Freeman. 70 today. It added up to almost $600 money Walter used for blood pressure meds and the arthritis pills that let him climb the church steps without wincing. He'd shrug it off when we asked. I'm fine, he'd say, like he could will his dignity to be enough. But that day the shrug didn't come. Keegan flicked his chin, license registration. Walter moved slow, narrating every reach like he was reading instructions out loud. I'm taking my wallet out, officer. The window framed a sliver of his profile, calm, chin-tight jaw. Keegan took the license, glanced once, then looked past it to the wallet. You could see the moment the cash registered. He told me later. Keegan asked where he was headed. Community center, Walter said, chess day for the kids. Not that it mattered. Keegan told him to step out. Hands on the car, feet wider. The pat-down was quick and rough, as if being older made you less human to the hands doing the searching. Keegan slid Walter's wallet from his back pocket like he'd done it 100 times. He opened it. Right there on the roadside where anyone could see if they cared to look, he thumbed the bills. 20, 40, 60, 80. Then he let out that small, satisfied breath people give when they think they've gotten away with something. He slipped the money into his own pocket. Drive safe, old man. I felt heat crawl up my neck. The car ahead of me rolled on like this was normal, like we hadn't all just watched a theft wearing a uniform. Walter didn't argue. He did what his father taught him. He lived to come home. He got back into the Buick, closed the door softly, and stared a long beat at the steering wheel before starting the engine. The light changed, traffic moved, the town pretended not to see. Later, over coffee at the community center, I asked him why he didn't raise hell. He held the mug with both hands as if warming them against something colder than January. You think I don't want to, he said. I carried mail to people who cursed me and to people who hugged me. Same route, same day. You learn where your voice gets heard and where it gets you hurt. His fingers tapped a rhythm I knew Karen used to hum to it while she baked. My father told me, Walter, keep your voice low around men who think loudness makes them right. That advice kept me breathing through times you don't want to know. He didn't tell the kids what happened. He set up the boards, like always chalked, opening principles on the whiteboard, and smiled when a 9-year-old tried to castle through check. He kneels to their height when he talks, so the world doesn't feel so tall to them. That's the kind of man he is. The kind who absorbs the blow so it doesn't hit someone smaller. But blows leave marks you can't see. The pills he rationed by snapping them in half. The way he paused before turning onto Maple if a cruiser sat 2 blocks down, calculating if dignity or safety cost more that day. The way he checked his taillights by tapping them with a palm and listening as if working parts could be convinced to sound guilty. You could say, well, file a complaint. People did. Paper vanished. The chief shook hands at barbecues and shook his head at baseless accusations. Keegan kept patrolling. Folks told each other to take side roads. We learned the shape of his route by rumor and fear. That last stop, the one where I sat 2 cars back, put a hard edge on a soft man. Not a rage that burns and burns, but the steady kind that heats a decision. Walter came by my porch that evening, the sky low and pink, and sat without asking like neighbors do, when words had been waiting. He told me the count, 8 stops, nearly $600. That's my medicine, you know, he said. That's nights without cramps. That's a walk with no noise in my knees. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Then he told me what hurt most wasn't the money. It was the lesson Keegan wanted him to relearn, that his age, his skin, his silence made him easy. I have spent my life being useful, he said. A man should be allowed to be small at 73. Read his Bible, play chess with children, go home in peace. He looked down the street to where Karen used to park the space still empty years after. Karen would have told me to speak. She always did. When he left the porch, boards sighed the way old wood does. Maple and elm met in the distance, the same corner, where the light had turned green like nothing was wrong. The town went on, but something in Walter had shifted barely, like the first move of a chess game that looks innocent until you understand the plan. He folded the receipt for his meds, there wasn't one, and tucked it into his wallet alongside a photograph of Karen in her Sunday hat. He straightened the brim of his own cap the same way he straightens hymnals in the pews. That night he told Marcus, and that was the moment the story stopped being about surviving and started being about standing. I can tell you what I saw from 2 cars back. I can tell you what he told me over coffee. Put them together and you have the truth that matters. A good man was robbed by someone paid to protect him. And the old lessons that kept him safe were suddenly the same chains that kept him quiet. By morning, the town would wake to the same roots, the same lights, the same bam on the same street. But Walter wasn't quite the same. He'd spent a lifetime delivering other people's mail. It was time to deliver a message of his own. Marcus is 22. Book smart in a way that makes you proud and a little jealous, but still tender enough to call his grandfather sir without thinking. He's studying law at Emory, the kind of kid who underlines in 3 colors and argues with the TV when the news is on. And lately, every time a patrol car eased past the house, I'd catch him watching Walter instead of the lights, watching the way the old man's shoulders rose a half inch and didn't fall until the cruiser turned the corner. I was at Sunday dinner the night it finally broke open. We passed the cornbread basket clockwise at Walter's table, same as always. The roast sat cooling, the grace was said, and then Marcus asked the question he'd been trying not to ask. Granddad, why do you flinch when you see a squad car? Walter tried to joke it away, a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. Old habit, he said. I've lived a long time by minding my business, but habits have weight, and this one dragged the truth to the surface. He put his fork down. He told Marcus about the stops, the taillight that wasn't broken, the rolling stamp that never rolled, the cash counted on the roadside, 8 times, almost $600. He didn't raise his voice. He just laid the facts down like cards. Marcus's chair scraped back. This isn't the Jim Crow South, he said, the words coming fast hot. You have rights, Granddad. You don't have to swallow this. He wasn't disrespectful. He was furious with the world that made an old man calculate survival in small bills. Walter held his gaze steady. Rights are one thing, he said softly. Coming home is another. My father taught me the difference. He was trying to keep me breathing. There it was, the seam where 2 eras don't quite stitch together. Walter's generation survived by bending. Marcus's had been told they could stand upright. Neither was wrong. Both were true. They just didn't fit at the same table without scraping a little. Marcus sat again, chest still working. He turned to me like he needed a witness. You saw it, he said. I nodded. I'd seen enough. He wiped his hands on a napkin like he was suiting up. Okay, he said, then we do something. His voice lost its tremor and found a purpose. There's a lawyer, Jasmine Powell, civil rights. She took a case in Decatur last year and won. We'll go tomorrow. Walter's brow creased. I'm 73, he said. I'm not trying to spend my last years in courtrooms and offices. I just want to teach those kids their openings and get to church on time. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on wood, the way boys do when they're begging and declaring at once. You taught me to shake a man's hand, look him in the eye, and stand up straight. That doesn't end at the door of a police car. Please, he didn't say for me, but it hung there anyway. The next afternoon, I drove them into the city. Walter sat in the passenger seat, hat on his knee, staring at the passing exit signs like mile markers of a life he never planned to live. Marcus rode him back, tapping a rhythm on his casebook, building a closing argument he hadn't been asked to give. Jasmine Powell's office wasn't fancy. 2 rooms, a desk with battle scars diplomas hung straight. She met us at the door, 30s, sharp eyes, no time wasted on small talk. Mr. Freeman, she said, offering both hands. I'm glad you came. She listened, not the kind of listening where someone waits for their turn to speak. She let silence do its work when Walter's voice caught, then asked questions that landed like pins around a map. Dates, times, wording, which pocket the wallet was in, whether anyone else was on the sidewalk. When he finished, she spun her monitor and showed him a photo. Is this the officer Keegan in uniform, that same smirk I'd seen through a windshield? Walter's jaw tightened. He tapped the glass with a knuckle. That's him. Powell nodded like a piece had just clicked into place. You're not the first, she said, careful, respectful. I've got 5 elderly clients with similar stories. Same officer, same stretch of maple, same missing key. Most don't want to file, they're afraid. They know how this can go. Walter's eyes went to the window, to nothing, to everything. They're right to be, he murmured. Powell didn't argue the fear. She set a legal pad between them like a bridge. Here's the thing, she said. Without documentation, the department calls it a misunderstanding. Without multiple complainants, the DA calls it a fluke. Without evidence, a judge calls it hearsay. She let that hang, then leaned in. But with a recorded stop and marked bills, we don't ask them to believe. We make them see. Marcus sat forward so fast his knee bumped the desk. Marked bills, like a sting. Powell glanced at him, then back to Walter. It would mean coordinating with the feds. It would mean you, Mr. Freeman, allowing a stop to happen under controlled conditions. There would be agents nearby. There would be safeguards. But I won't lie, it would be hard. Walter rubbed his thumb over the brim of his hat, tracing a groove time had cut there. You're asking me to put myself in the hands of the same kind of men who taught me to lower my voice, he said. That's not nothing. No, Powell said, it's not. But you wouldn't be in their hands, you'd be in ours, and theirs, and your own. It's your choice. I watched Marcus swallow his argument, choose a different approach. He slid his phone across the desk, a photo open. Walter at the community center bent over a chessboard, a little boy grinning wide, both of them reaching for the same knight. If he keeps taking from you, Marcus said quietly, he's taking from him too. Walter looked at the picture, a long beat. It's a strange thing watching a decision settle on a man's face, a tide going out, leaving what matters. He lifted his eyes. What would we have to do? Powell exhaled the breath she'd been holding. I'll call Agent Diana Chen. She's the one I trust on police corruption cases. If she takes it, we set up a controlled stop. We document chain of custody to the letter so no one can wave it away on a technicality. And we prepare you so that not 1 second catches you by surprise. FBI, Walter repeated, tasting the letters like a foreign word. That's a long road from delivering mail. It's the same road I said before I could stop myself. Just a different package. He smiled at that small and real. Then the smile faded. What happens if something goes wrong? Then we stop, Powell said. We don't risk you. We find another way. But Mr. Freeman, I need you to hear this. You are not alone in that car. Marcus reached over and took his grandfather's hand, the way children do in church when the sermon gets too heavy. We'll do it together, he said, please. Walter looked at the two of them, the future, and the fight, then at me, the neighbor who'd seen too much from 2 cars back. He did the math old men do, what's left to lose, what's left to teach, who's watching, who's worth it. All right, he said. The word was steady like a door eased open. Call your agent. Powell was already dialing. Marcus leaned back, eyes shining with something fierce and careful. And Walter, he set his hat back on his head, brim straight as if to meet whatever came next with the decency he'd carried his whole life. On the drive home, the city unwound behind us. Marcus didn't tap his book this time. Walter watched the mirrors without flinching. We passed a cruiser on the shoulder. The lights didn't come on. No one spoke for a mile. At a red light, Walter finally said almost to himself, "My father taught me to lower my voice. Maybe he also taught me how to raise it, and I just never needed to listen until now." The light turned green. We went on. I'll never forget the look on Walter's face when Agent Diana Chen laid it all out on the table. She didn't sugarcoat a thing. She spoke plain steady with the kind of authority that comes from years of chasing corruption and carrying proof instead of promises. "Mr. Freeman," she said, sliding a small envelope across the desk. "Inside is $80. It looks ordinary, but each bill is coated in invisible ink and holds a microscopic tracker. If Officer Keegan takes this money, we'll know exactly where it goes down to the very second. And once we recover it, there is no defense, no misunderstanding, no paperwork shuffle. It will be the truth in his own pocket." Walter didn't open the envelope. He just stared at it like it was heavier than bricks. His hands rested flat on the table, knuckles pale. After a long silence, he shook his head. "I've lived 73 years by keeping clear of men in uniform. My parents taught me, don't raise your voice, don't raise your hand, and you'll make it home. I've kept that rule all my life, and you're asking me to break it now." At my age, his voice caught on that last phrase, and for a moment the room seemed smaller, like his years were pressing down on his shoulders. Agent Chen leaned in her tone, gentle but unyielding. "Mr. Freeman, I understand the fear. I do. But this isn't just about you. It's about every elder in your community who's had to choose between groceries and medicine because of this man. It's about every young person learning that silence is safer than justice. You wouldn't be alone. I'll be there. My team will be there. And Marcus will be there. We'll surround you with protection, and you'll have the law on your side for once, not against you." Walter's eyes flicked to Marcus, who sat beside him like a coiled spring. Marcus reached over and clasped his grandfather's hand. "Granddad," he said quietly but firmly, "you've carried this family on your back all my life. You've carried this community for decades. Let me carry some of it with you now. I'll be right there, I promise. You won't face this man alone." The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Walter stared down at the envelope again. The bills inside were just paper, but they felt like a choice between the life he had lived and the one he might leave behind. He cleared his throat and pushed the envelope back. "I can't decide right now. Not yet." That night, I found him sitting in his living room. The light dimmed the old clock, ticking like a slow heartbeat. On the mantel sat a framed photograph of Karen, her smile soft, her Sunday hat tilted just so. Walter held the picture in both hands, whispering like she was still there. "Karen," he murmured, voice breaking. "You always told me to speak when silence felt safer. You said dignity meant nothing if it was bought with fear. But I'm tired, sweetheart. I'm tired." His thumb brushed the edge of the glass and he closed his eyes. "What if I fail? What if this kills me faster than the heart pills I can't afford?" He set the picture down carefully, then leaned back, staring at the ceiling like it might hold answers. I could see the struggle on his face, fear on one side, conscience on the other. He had lived his whole life surviving, but survival, he was realizing, had a cost. When Marcus returned from the kitchen with tea, Walter looked at him as though weighing the boy's future against his own past. "You believe this is the right thing to do?" he asked. Marcus didn't hesitate. "I don't just believe it, I know it. Because if men like Keegan never face consequences, they'll keep stealing until there's nothing left. And if we stay silent, we're handing them permission. Granddad, you always told me some things are worth being afraid for. This is one of them." Walter sat very still. The only sound was the rattle of the tea in his cup as his hands trembled. Then slowly he placed the cup down, straightened in his chair, and gave a single nod. "All right," he said, his voice low but firm. "If this is the fight God's given me at the end of my life, then I'll take it. I won't be silent anymore." And just like that, the decision was made. Walter Freeman, the man who had spent 73 years avoiding conflict with those in power, had agreed to face the very system that had stolen from him. Not with fists, not with shouts, but with the quiet courage of a man who finally chose to stand. It was the first time in his long life he dared to confront injustice head-on, and it would change everything. I remember the morning they gave Walter the briefing. It wasn't flashy, nothing out of a movie, no secret gadgets or spy drama, just quiet tools laid out on a table, each one holding more weight than its size suggested. Agent Diana Chen placed a plain leather wallet down first. Inside was $80. Ordinary on the outside, but each bill carried invisible ink and a microscopic tracker. If Officer Keegan takes this money, she explained, we'll follow it every step of the way. Once we recover it, there will be no excuse, no missing paperwork. It will be undeniable proof. Next came a simple black pen. She held it up carefully. This goes in your shirt pocket. It writes like a normal pen, but it records every word. Don't worry, it won't draw attention. Just keep it close. Finally, she showed him two small devices no larger than a postage stamp. These will sit on your dashboard in rearview mirror. They'll look like harmless air fresheners, but they'll be our eyes. We'll see and hear everything. Walter didn't touch any of it. He just looked, his jaw tight, his hands folded. The weight in that room wasn't in the tools themselves, it was in the choice they represented. Chen leaned forward. If at any point you feel unsafe, say one word, mailbox. That's your signal. The moment we hear it, we'll intervene. My team will be there in seconds. Walter nodded, but it wasn't a confident nod. Later, he admitted he hardly slept that night. The wallet sat on his dresser like a burden he couldn't shake. Each time he closed his eyes, old memories stirred. He remembered being 17, standing with his best friend Henry at a bus stop after dark. Two white officers pulled up. Henry spoke too quickly, tried to explain himself, and in seconds he was thrown to the ground, beaten until his cries blurred into the night. Walter had stood frozen, paralyzed with fear. That night he learned what silence could buy survival, and now, decades later, he was about to gamble that silence away. By dawn, he rose with a heaviness in his chest, but instead of defeat, it felt more like resolve. He opened his closet and reached for a shirt he hadn't worn in years, a light blue button-down. Karen, his late wife, had always said made him look distinguished. He ran his fingers across the fabric before slipping it on, smoothing the collar with deliberate care. If he was going to face the man who had robbed him, he would do it standing tall, with dignity intact. In the mirror, he saw the silver in his hair, neatly trimmed, and the lines carved deep by time. For a moment, he whispered, almost like a prayer, Karen, if you can see me now, I hope I'm making you proud. Downstairs, Marcus was waiting by the door, arms crossed, his face caught between worry and determination. When Walter picked up the wallet, Marcus stepped forward and took his grandfather's hand, gripping it tightly. You're not alone, Granddad, he said. Not today. Not ever. Walter gave the faintest smile. His fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer stood alone. They stepped outside into a cool morning. The neighborhood was just waking, the hum of a lawnmower, the bark of a dog, but for Walter, everything felt sharpened, like the air itself was holding its breath. The Buick sat at the curb, already fitted with the hidden cameras. As Walter slid into the driver's seat, Agent Chen's voice came softly through the earpiece. Testing, Mr. Freeman. Can you hear me? Yes, he answered, his throat dry but steady. Clear. Good. Just drive the route naturally. Remember, your safety comes first. If you need us, say the word. Walter adjusted his rearview mirror. For an instant, he didn't see himself. He saw that 17-year-old boy frozen at the bus stop, too afraid to move, watching his friend beaten into silence. He closed his eyes, breathed deep, and let that image fade. When he opened them again, the man staring back wasn't a boy anymore. He was 73, tired but unbroken. He turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. His hand lingered on the steering wheel, then tightened. Behind him, Marcus stood watching, shoulders squared, as if he could carry half the weight just by being there. Walter straightened his back, shifted the car into gear, and pulled onto Maple Avenue. The streets of Riverdale stretched before him, familiar and heavy with history. For most of his life, he had driven them with caution, careful to avoid drawing attention. But today was different. Today, every mile carried a quiet defiance. Fear was still in the car with him, but so was resolve. And somewhere down those roads, Officer Brendan Keegan was waiting. I rode 2 cars behind Walter that morning, same as before, the Buick humming its steady hymn down Maple. The sky was bright and indifferent. He kept to the right lane, blinkers early, full stops, so complete you could count a slow 3 in your head. Agent Chen's voice checked in now and then through his earpiece, calm, measured the sound of a metronome in a room full of nerves. For the first 20 minutes, we were all breath and waiting. A cruiser passed going the other way. Not Keegan. Another sat tucked behind a billboard. Not him either. Walter didn't glance around. He drove like he had trained himself to drive after 70 years of being watched, precise, polite, unquestionable. An hour in the dashboard clock clicked to 10:47. The cameras kept their quiet watch. Walter made the turn at Elm, circled back, hit the same 4 blocks like a prayer, maple, birch, pine, and back again. He didn't fidget, didn't tap the wheel. The only sign that anything inside him was moving was the way his breaths came in pairs, inhale, hold, release. At the 90-minute mark, a police cruiser merged behind him. My stomach tightened. Walter signaled, changed lanes, smoothly kept his hands at 10 and 2. The cruiser drifted, then took an exit with its signal still blinking like a joke only the driver thought was funny. Silence returned louder than sirens. At exactly 2 hours, Chen's voice came through softer than usual. Like she hated the words. All units stand down. We've just been advised Officer Keegan called in sick. We'll regroup. Walter's fingers tightened once on the wheel. That was all. He took the next right, then the next, and guided the Buick toward the rendezvous point with the same careful dignity he always used to leave a church pew. No rush, no show. When we pulled into the empty lot behind the old hardware store, the FBI van door slid open. Chen stepped out, apology already in her eyes. Sometimes this happens, she said. It's a long game. We don't take unnecessary risks when the variable bars are off. We'll try another day. Walter nodded, but there was a hollowness in it. He removed the earpiece like you might remove a wedding ring you weren't ready to take off. Maybe it's a sign, he said, voice low. Maybe I've done enough living to know when to sit back down. Powell arrived a few minutes later, a legal pad under her arm, wind in her hair. Or maybe it's a sign we sharpen the blade, she said, standing on the other side of Walter's open door. We have the plan. Now we refine it. We map his patterns better. We prep for questions he's likely to ask. We don't quit because the first punch didn't land. Walter's eyes stayed on the dash. I'm an old man, Miss Powell. I don't need to prove I can bleed. You don't, she said, but he needs to learn he can. No one spoke for a moment. The air smelled like dust in summer. A train groaned somewhere far off. Walter breathed it out. Let me think, he said. He did what thinking men do. He went back to the place where his life still made sense. That afternoon, he walked into the community center with a bag of chess pieces clacking softly in his palm. The kids were at school. The room was quiet. He set up boards 2 by 2 like always. I followed a few steps behind and watched him align the rooks so their corners kissed the squares just right. Order even in small things steadied him. The door creaked. Eloise Washington stepped in 82, a hat pin just so the same lady who once brought pies to every funeral and sat with widowers who didn't know how to boil an egg. She didn't smile. She held her purse like it was a lifeline. Walter, she said quietly, do you have a minute? He pulled out a chair. She sat with the care of someone whose bones keep their own weather. I heard about what you're doing, she said. With the officers. Her voice stumbled on the word as if pronouncing it gave it power. I didn't want to say anything before. I was ashamed. She swallowed. He took $300 from me, Walter. Said I made an illegal turn. I've been driving that same route to the pharmacy for 20 years. 300. That was my heart pills and the ointment for my knees. I cut the pills in halves. I told the doctor I dropped some down the sink. Her hands twisted in her lap. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. The room seemed to narrow to the space between them. Walter leaned forward, elbows on the table, the way he does with children who've blundered a queen and think the game is over. Who else? He asked softly. The door opened again. Mr. Turner came in 80 spare, as a fence post retired machinist, Sunday suit even on a Tuesday. He got me for $200, he said, not bothering to sit. Birthday money for my grandson. Said my brake light was out. It wasn't. I checked in the grocery store window. Then came Gladys with her cane and her careful steps, $90. Said I rolled through a stop. I haven't rolled through anything since 1978. A fourth, then a fifth. Stories stacking like checkers, one red on another, until the board was nothing but captured pieces. No one raised their voice. No one swore. These were people who'd lived through enough to know that words can be used against you. But there was a heat in the room, the kind that doesn't flare and fade. It accumulates. Walter's shoulders sank, then lifted. He looked from face to face. I had seen him sad before and tired. What I saw now was different. It was the moment the hinge catches and the door that wouldn't close finally swings true. He turned his palms up on the table as if to show he wasn't hiding anything. I thought maybe this was my burden, he said, a lesson I had to relearn about keeping my head down. But I'm looking at you and I'm thinking about the children who come here after school, and I'm remembering how quiet this town can be when the wrong people talk loud. He paused, the room holding still around him. No, he said, at last, voice steady as a level beam. I will not be quiet. Eloise nodded once as if a verdict had been read. Mr. Turner sat then for the first time, and the chair scraped the floor like a signature. When Walter stood to put away the extra boards, his movements were the same, careful, precise, but the air around him had changed. Resolve does that. It doesn't make a man louder, it makes him clearer. He gathered the knights, the bishops, the pawns, each piece in its small velvet pouch, hands, steady breath even. That evening when we met Powell again, Walter didn't talk about signs or sitting back down. He asked about routes, about times, about how long a camera records if the car battery fails. He asked how the chain of custody gets logged, who signs how many copies, where the copies are stored. He wasn't bracing for a fight anymore. He was planning one. Chen joined us on a quick call. We'll rechart Keegan's patrol patterns, she said. Tuesdays and Thursdays look most promising. We'll run a dry run tomorrow. No risk, just timing. Then when we go live, we'll go clean. If he bites, we'll have it all. Walter listened, then said simply, let's do it right. Outside, the streetlights came on one by one. The town looked the same. But inside the small circle of that room, an old man, a young attorney, a neighbor who'd seen too much something, had shifted from fear to purpose. The first attempt had failed. The first attempt had taught. Sometimes a sting begins not with the catch, but with the patience to keep bait in the water. And patience Walter had in abundance. We picked a Thursday. Chen said his patterns were cleanest, then same streets, same hour, same tells. The morning felt ordinary on purpose. Walter ran the Buick along Maple like any other day. Blinkers early, full stops, the blue shirt crisp, as if the starch itself could keep a man safe. I followed 2 cars back. Marcus was behind me, jaw set, both hands on the wheel like prayer. Eyes on Chen's voice whispered through Walter's earpiece. You're looking good, Mr. Freeman. Just drive. For 40 minutes, the world did nothing. A mail truck eased out from a side street. A school bus exhaled children. A cruiser idled near the park, but it wasn't him. Walter stayed steady. He didn't hunt his mirrors. He let the city come to him. At 10:26, I saw it before Walter did the dented rear bumper, the way the patrol car slid into the lane like a shark joining a current. 2 beats, then the flash of blue in the mirror. My throat went dry. Walter signaled and pulled to the curb. Perfect practiced. His hands went to 10 and 2 and stayed there, made of wood. Target acquired, Chen said, low and even. We're with you. Remember the word if you need us? Keegan took his time walking up. He always did. He gave the window 2 sharp raps with his knuckles like he owned the glass. Walter rolled it down halfway, no more. I could see part of Keegan's reflection in the side mirror, the mirrored sunglasses catching a slice of sky, the angles of a smirk, you know, even when you can't see it full on. License and registration, he said. No greeting, no explanation. Walter narrated each movement, voice soft, steady. My right hand is going to my wallet, officer. He moved slow enough for a camera to write it down. That's how you survive when you've been taught the difference between being right and being safe. You know why I pulled you over? Keegan asked, tone casual, the way a cat is casual with a mouse. I don't, Sir Walter said. I believe I came to a full stop at Elm. Rolled it, Keegan said, lying as easily as exhaling. Happens. He took the license, glanced, handed it back without looking like he was seeing it. His attention wasn't on the name. It was on the bulge of a wallet in a back pocket, the suggestion of bills. Step out of the vehicle, he said, already impatient. Hands where I can see them. Walter obeyed. The door clicked, open. He unfolded himself from the seat, one careful inch after another, old strength doing a young man's work. Keegan spun him gently by the elbow and put him against the Buick palms on the roof, feet wider. The pat-down wasn't a search for weapons. It was ritual. Firm fast, a little harder than necessary at the ribs. The kind meant to remind you who chooses how your day goes. Mailbox Chen said, almost a breath, a reminder and a lifeline. Walter didn't use it. He held still. He held steady. He had chosen this. Keegan's hand slid into the back pocket. The wallet came out. He opened it in the open air like a man counting tips. 20, 40, 60, 80. He didn't need to say the numbers. You could hear it in the soft flick of paper. His head tilted. There it was, the quick spark in his eye. You see when a man thinks he's found a shortcut. This is a lot of cash, he said. You carrying for a reason, for groceries in the community center, Walter said. I teach chess on Thursdays. Keegan grunted like he'd heard a joke he didn't get. He lifted the money between two fingers, turned the bills as if the light could accuse them. Then he slipped the stack into his own pocket with the practiced flick of somebody who's done it before. This must be for drugs, he said, making it official enough to sound legal to anyone not listening. I'm confiscating as evidence. You could feel the air thicken. In the van, Chen's team would be seeing everything from the angle of the sunglasses to the frame-by-frame moment when property crossed the line into theft. The pen in Walter's pocket heard every word on. The tiny cameras saw every motion. The trackers in those bills woke up like tiny hearts and began to beat data. Do I get a receipt for that? Walter asked, his voice still even the way a man's voice is even when he's keeping something worse from spilling out. It wasn't a challenge, it was a string tied to the truth for later. Keegan's smile was small and mean. We'll handle it at the station, he said. The thing about that line is that it means everything and nothing, and he knew it. He patted Walter once between the shoulder blades, mock concern, and stepped back. I'm letting you off with a warning on the stop sign, he added, tone dripping fake mercy. Drive safe, old man. He walked away, authority swinging on his belt. He didn't write anything. He didn't place anything in an evidence bag. He slid into his cruiser, typed a few keys like actors type on TV, and pulled out slow. Hold position, Chen said. A beat of silence. You could hear someone breathe into the background. Then operation successful. Mr. Freeman returned to rendezvous point B. All units tracked the bills. Walter didn't move right away. He stood by the car, both hands on the roof as if it were a rail over cold water. His shoulders lifted, once fell. He took his hands down, opened the driver's door, and sat. The camera on the dash caught his face in the reflection of the speedometer. Jaw tight, eyes wet, but not broken. He reached for the wheel, and that's when the trembling started small. At first, then a flutter in his fingers like a silent engine misfiring. I pulled in behind him as he merged back into traffic. From where I sat, he looked the same as he always did, upright, composed. Inside that blue shirt, a storm was passing. I've seen men come out of hard moments either hollowed or honed. Walter looked honed. On the radio, snippets from the van, ping at Maple and 3rd. Second ping corner store on Pine. The bills were telling their own story now, moving through a system that had assumed it would never have to answer questions. At the next light, Walter finally spoke, voice low enough that only the pen could have heard if I hadn't been watching his lips. All these years, he said, and he thought my silence meant I didn't know the difference. 2 blocks later, Chen again, Mr. Freeman, you did everything right. No more today. We'll take it from here. He gave a small nod, the only answer he had to give. He turned into the lot behind the old hardware store and parked neatly between 2 faded lines the way men who respect spaces do. When he cut the engine, the sudden quiet rang. I walked to his window. He didn't open the door immediately. He held the wheel a moment longer, as if releasing it too fast would release something else he'd kept in place. Then he looked up at me and let out a breath that seemed to take a year to cross his lips. Humiliating, he said, but necessary. I didn't argue. What could I add to a sentence like that? In the van, Chen was already cataloging, time-stamping, securing the chain that men like Keegan count on others dropping. The evidence wasn't a story anymore. It was a record. Walter stepped out, smoothed his shirt, and straightened his cap. His hands had stopped shaking. You could tell something had settled inside him. Not peace, not yet, but a kind of certainty. The kind that comes when a man knows the hole his enemy just dug is deep enough to hold the truth. He looked back at the Buick, then out toward Maple, the street where a crime had just been committed in daylight with a badge. He did it to himself, Walter said, almost to the air. And we did, and the bills were still talking. The day after the sting, the FBI handed everything over to the district attorney's office. It should have been a turning point. Clear video marked Bill's chain of custody sealed tight. To Walter, it felt like the first real proof that maybe, just maybe, justice was possible. But when Agent Chen and Attorney Jasmine Powell walked into DA Eleanor Hayes' office, the welcome was icy. Hayes sat behind her desk, hands folded, her tone clipped and precise. "I've reviewed the file," she said. "The evidence raises questions. Chain of custody may not hold under scrutiny." A defense attorney would shred this in minutes. Powell's jaw tightened. Chain of custody. "We have video, audio, the marked money itself. What more could you possibly need?" Hayes didn't blink. "One incident isn't enough to indict a decorated officer. We would be crucified in court. Come back with a pattern, something indisputable. Until then, my office won't proceed." The words landed like cold stones. Walter sat silently in the corner, hat in his lap, listening to his future slip into bureaucracy. When they left the office, Powell's fury burst. "We've handed her gold-plated evidence and she acts like it's scrap metal." "You saw it, Diana. She's protecting him." Chen only nodded grimly. "Or protecting herself." That night, Walter sat by his kitchen phone, staring at the wall clock ticking past midnight. When it rang, the sound cut through the silence like a blade. He picked up. The voice on the other end was low, distorted. "Stop making trouble, old man. You don't know who you're dealing with. Keep this up, and you won't live to regret it." Click. The dial tone hummed in his ear as Walter lowered the receiver with trembling hands. He had expected pushback, but not this. Threats had a way of sinking into your bones when you were 73 and alone in a dark house. By morning, he found more than words. His Buick parked out front was defaced in red spray paint. Across the hood, one word dripped like blood. "Traitor." Neighbors saw it before Walter did. Some averted their eyes, others muttered under their breath. But Walter simply stood on the curb staring. He wasn't shocked anymore. He was tired, angry, and strangely calm. Later that day, Powell called in tears. Her office windows had been smashed overnight, the walls defaced with slurs. Nothing stolen, just broken glass and broken peace. "They want us scared," she said, voice raw. "They want us to back down." Walter knew then that this wasn't about one officer pocketing a few bills. It was bigger, deeper. A whole system with roots tangled in politics, money, and fear. Keegan wasn't a rogue wolf. He was a guard dog, shielded by people who wanted him exactly where he was. That realization hit harder than any patrol car light in his mirror. This wasn't a fight against one man. It was a fight against an entire wall of power. Walter sat on his porch as the sun fell, watching the shadows lengthen across his street. He thought about his wife Karen, about the lessons his parents had whispered to him as a child. Keep quiet, keep safe, survive. But survival had a price, and he had paid it for too long. Now looking at the vandalized car and hearing Powell's broken voice through the phone, Walter knew the truth. Silence wasn't survival anymore. Silence was surrender. For the first time, the fear in his chest hardened into something sharper. Not just anger, not just pride, resolve. The system might have been bigger than him, but it had finally revealed its hand. And once people saw the mask slip, they would never forget what was underneath. "I first saw him in the federal building lobby, sitting under a framed flag with his hat in his hands. He looked like a hum, even out of uniform, straight back, close-cropped hair, size that had learned to scan a room before they rested on a face. Miguel Rodriguez," he said when Agent Chen came down to meet him. Then quieter, "I was Keegan's partner." He didn't waste time. Inside a small conference room with the blinds drawn and a single recorder on the table, Rodriguez laid it out. "It's not just Brendan," he said. "He's the bold one, sure. But there are others. 4, maybe 5 who'd run the same play. Same streets, same drivers. They call it special attention. That's the phrase in the patrol briefings." Chen didn't blink. "Who protects them?" He hesitated, jaw working like it hurt to speak. "Chief Hargrove," he said at last. "Not in writing, not in anything you can wave in court. But we get reassigned when complaints stack up or a supervisor drops by with donuts and tells us to use discretion on Maple. You learn what that means." He slid a small folder across the table. Printouts, shift rosters, notes from briefings. A map with circles drawn around aging blocks, streets where front steps sag, and for sale signs tire out. They target older black homeowners, he said. Stops tickets, tow threats, compliance checks. Make it expensive to stay. Then someone from Riverdale Renaissance Developers shows up with a soft voice and a low offer. Hargrove calls it clearing blight. The word hung in the air. It always does, like a deodorant sprayed over rot. Rodriguez stared at his hands. I told myself I was doing good. We were reducing crime on paper. But after a while, the numbers felt like a trick we played on ourselves so we could sleep. Then I watched Keegan take cash off Mr. Turner, the machinist, with the stiff knee. Saw him tuck it like it was his due. I said something. He told me I was soft. Next day, I'm working solo for a week. He looked up, finally meeting our eyes. Fear and something braver sat together there. If I give you names, I'm done. You know that. No one takes care of a rat in a uniform. But I can't keep watching this. I've got 2 boys. I don't want them growing up in a place where a badge means you can cash out a man's dignity. Chen nodded once, a promise without the word. We'll move carefully. You won't be alone either. He exhaled. His shoulders dropped a fraction, like a pack had shifted but not fallen. Then the twist turned the room colder. An agent stepped in, with a phone murmured something to Chen that took the color from her face. She covered the mouthpiece. We've got a CI on Keegan, she said. He's bragging he'll clean up the mess. Plan is to find narcotics in Mr. Freeman's car or house. Soon, he wants to taint the evidence and bury the complaint. The table went very still. Rodriguez closed his eyes like a man who recognizes a smell before he names it. That's how they do it, he said. You make the source dirty. Nothing they touch counts. What's the timeline, I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Days, Chen said. Maybe hours. Everything moved at once after that. Chen split her team 1 unit to shadow Keegan so tight he can feel our breath, another to set up additional cameras at Walter's home. Marcus got instructions like a checklist for a storm. Don't let Walter drive alone. Keep the recording pen on him even inside the house. Log every interaction, every knock at the door. Call the code word even if it only feels wrong. I drove straight to Walter's place with Chen's texts. We mounted a doorbell, a sensor by the back fence, a small lens watching the street from the eaves. It felt intrusive until you remembered who'd been intruding first. Walter stood on the porch in his blue shirt, listening without interrupting the way men do when they are choosing between fear and resolve for the 10th time in a week. Granddad Marcus said when we finish, they think planting drugs will make this go away. Walter didn't flinch. A lie is still a lie, he said. It just needs more light. Rodriguez stayed until dusk because leaving too soon felt like betrayal. On the curb, he spoke softly to Walter without the stiffness of rank. Sir, I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. Walter placed a hand on his arm. You came when you could bear it, he said. That counts. When night fell, the street looked ordinary again. Porch lamps, a dog barking 3 doors down, the soft roll of tires on Maple. But all of us knew different. The web was showing its threads now, a chief who called predation discretion, a developer who called displacement renewal, a cop who called theft evidence. And in the middle of it, a 73-year-old man refused to be the easiest part of their story. Keegan hadn't made his move yet, but the trap he thought he was setting was already lit from the inside. Night folds over Maple like a heavy coat. Porch lights blink out one by one. Inside Walter's house, the ticking clock is the loudest thing until a soft click at the back door says someone knows where the latch gives. Keegan moves like a man who's done this before. No uniform, ball cap low. He carries a thin manila envelope in a plastic bag the size of a fist. He doesn't bother whispering hello. I'm here to straighten things out, he says, closing the door behind him. You sign this and we're done. He lays the paper on Walter's table, typed statement. Misunderstanding? No cash taken. Elderly, memory unreliable. His eyes sweep the room, once then drift to the hallway cabinet. Open that, he orders. Walter's hands shake, but they don't stall. He opens the cabinet. Keegan slides the plastic bag onto a high shelf behind folded linens. White powder. Neat as a threat. That's what I'll find if you make me, Keegan says. Or you sign and this never happened. Walter swallows. He is 73 in his blue shirt with a recorder disguised as a pen clipped to his pocket. The doorbell camera sees the outline of Keegan's cap. The Eve's camera sees his face when he leans toward the kitchen light. Somewhere down the block, an unmarked car waits too far to spook, close enough to sprint. Keegan taps the statement. Sign. Walter looks at the signature line. His thumb presses the pen one click to write, one to record. He keeps his voice a church whisper. No, he says, I've been quiet all my life. Not this time. Something hard flashes in Keegan's eyes. The smile drops. He steps closer, knuckles whitening on the chair back. For a breath, the room holds the shape of what could happen next. You don't know who you're dealing with, he hisses. Walter's answer is small and immovable. I do now. Keegan snatches the paper, crumples it, and stuffs it into his jacket. Enjoy your big day in court, old man, he spits, if you make it. He's gone as fast as he came. The back door takes a breath and settles. Walter stands there listening to his own pulse in his ears. He takes one step, then another. He makes it to the hallway before the tremor reaches his chest, a deep, mean squeeze. He grips the wall, fights for air he can't catch. That's when Marcus comes through the front keys, jangling voice already mid-sentence. Granddad, He sees the open back door, the cabinet ajar, the color gone from Walter's face. He bolsters him to a chair, phone already out. Mailbox. He tells the line he's been told to call. Now. He runs to the cabinet, reaches behind the linens, and finds the bag. His hands don't shake until after it's in a zippered pouch, untouched, ready for gloves. He snaps photos time-angle shelf, just like Chen taught him. Then he locks the front door, the back, every window he can reach, and kneel in front of Walter. Stay with me, he says, voice breaking. Please. The first siren he hears is not a squad car, it's an ambulance. The second set of lights belongs to Chen's team, moving with quiet speed through the kitchen. Gloves on lenses covered, chain of custody forms open. Keegan thought he brought a shadow. He left a spotlight. At the hospital, everything goes white and humming. Electrodes, a cuff that hisses. Nurses with the competence of people who have seen the worst and still believe in better. Marcus sits at Walter's bedside, fingers laced around the old man's hand. I stand in the doorway, useless and praying. Walter's eyes open, glassy, stubborn, alive. Granddad Marcus whispers, we got it. We got the bag. Chen's got it logged. You don't have to worry. Walter's lips curve barely. His voice is a rasp pulled up from deep inside. Listen to me, he says. If I quit, we all lose. Tears track down Marcus's cheeks. He nods hard. We won't, he says. I won't. The monitor answers with a steady beep like a metronome, setting the pace for the next movement. In the hall, Chen speaks low into a phone doorbell, footage secured. Eve's cam clear. Audio from the pen is clean. The planted bag is sealed and tagged. Keegan left thinking he'd buried the truth. He didn't know he'd given it a second life. When they wheel Walter for tests, he lifts his hand a few inches, enough to brush Marcus's wrist. It's a blessing, a baton of promise. Outside, night holds its breath over Maple. Inside, an old man keeps his barely, bravely. And every machine around him agrees on one thing he has not done. I was in the back row the morning Walter walked into federal court. He wore his old suit, pressed a little shiny at the elbows, and a blue tie Karen used to fuss over. He moved slow, but his back was straight, the way a man stands when he knows who he is, no matter what room he enters. When he took the stand, the room settled. He looked at the jurors like neighbors across a fence. I'm 73, he said, voice steady. I know the difference between a lawful stop and a man stealing from me in daylight. I know the difference between justice and a shakedown. Eloise followed, hat pinned, neat hands folded to hide the tremor. She told them about the $300 meant for heart pills, then Mr. Turner, then others. Each story landed in the same place, the same streets, the same officer, the same vanishing cash. Officer Miguel Rodriguez came next. No uniform, no shield to hide behind. He looked at Chief Hargrove and didn't blink. We were told to give special attention to Maple, he said. That meant older black residents. Pressure until they sold. The chief knew. His words didn't rise. They didn't need to. Agent Chen knit the pieces together. She showed the marked bills on a screen. Serial numbers matched to timestamps, pings hopping from Walter's wallet, to Keegan's pocket, to a corner store, to a bank deposit. She played the recording from Walter's pen, the quiet, do I get a receipt, and Keegan's flat reply. Then the audio from Walter's kitchen, the threat and the scrape of a chair when the old man said, Not this time. You could feel the air change. Even the defense table stilled. Closing arguments came and went like weather. The jury filed out. We stared at the seal on the wall and the clock that wouldn't move. When the jurors returned, no one breathed. On the count of conspiracy against rights under color of law, the foreperson said, "We find the defendant, Brendan Keegan, guilty." A beat then again. "We find the defendant, Victor Hargrove, guilty." More counts, more guilties. DeHaze didn't leave in handcuffs, but the emails and favors unspooled in open court had stripped her title down to its letters. Walter didn't shout. He covered his eyes with one hand and let the tears come, the quiet kind you save for a lifetime. Later, he told me, "It's the first time I've ever felt the law was standing in the same room as me." A week after sentencing, he drove to the cemetery with a small bouquet of yellow roses. I waited by the gate while he walked to Karen's stone. He brushed a leaf away, set the flowers down, and laid his palm on cool granite. "We won," he whispered. "For the kids, for the ones after us." That's the truth I carry from that courtroom. Systems are heavy, and they take time to lift. But sometimes one steady voice spoken at the end of a long life moves more than anyone expects. Even old bones can bend history a notch closer to right if they stand. And that's where Walter's journey leaves us, with a reminder that courage has no age, and that even in the face of fear, one voice can spark change for an entire community. His story isn't just about standing up to a corrupt officer, but about proving that justice is possible when we refuse to stay silent. If this story moved you, please take a moment to hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Mr. Max Stories for more powerful tales that shine a light on truth and human dignity. Your support means the world. It keeps our team motivated to keep bringing you meaningful stories that matter. And remember, here at Mr. Max Stories, every voice counts, every story leaves a mark.